Prime Minister Mark Carney is headed off on another international trade mission to shore up investment and diversify trade. He'll be traveling with a small delegation to India, Australia, and Japan this week, hitting up cities such as Mumbai, New Delhi, Sydney, Canberra, and Tokyo on the 10-day trip.
It's the urgency we have to diversify our trade, to build relationships, strategic relationship. And honestly, if you look at the key places we're going to go, look at India, one of the largest economy in the world, one of the largest population. It's key for Canada to have a strategic relationship.
National Defence Minister David McGuinty joins me now. Sir, the first leg of this trip is to India, where the government's hoping to fast-track the CEPA, the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. Is that something you hope to actually finalize on this trip and have done before you come home?
Well, it's a great privilege for me, Peter, to be with the Prime Minister on this three-country tour through into the Indo-Pacific. As you know, we're starting in India, then we're moving on to Australia, and from there over to Japan. So obviously, listen, I'll leave the announcements to the Prime Minister in due course. We're going to work our way forward, but we are definitely deepening our relationship in that region. And so I'm looking forward to contributing where I can, particularly when it comes to defense.
The defense procurement, the strategy is out. Is there a role for these countries that you're going to, I'm thinking Australia in particular, for the defense industries to partner up? I mean, Australia's been really talking up the potential for some kind of a strategic alliance on critical minerals, for example.
Absolutely right, Peter. We are a Five Eye partner country. We purchased our over-the-horizon radar system from the Australians. It's the most advanced in the world. I think it's the largest export ever in Australian history. We will be digging down deeper and wider on that relationship, more investment in technology, space, AI, quantum. Obviously, critical minerals will factor into this. This is why we're heading there, to be able to, I think, expand this relationship more bilaterally. The Prime Minister's made it very clear. We intend in Canada to spread our wings, to diversify our relationships. That's what we were doing in Brussels and Munich just last week. And this will continue during this three-legged tour through the Indo-Pacific.
To do that, though, to spread those wings and diversify these markets, the India part of this alone would double bilateral trade from 31 billion to 70 billion in 4 years, frankly. Do we have the export capacity to do that without dramatically upgrading our ports and everything else to make sure we can actually get this stuff out the door?
Also a great question. Also something that we are delivering on now. I was just in Esquimalt 3 days ago, examining how we're going to expand that naval base. I had already toured Halifax to receive up to 12 submarines, as well as frigates and destroyers and many other ships that are anticipated. Look, we're moving at breakneck speed here. Peter, for example, when we went from 5 potential builders and sellers of submarines and we down-selected to 2, the normal time that would take would be about 3 years. We did that in less than 6 months. So we're moving at a pace that's not been seen before. We're moving now to build. Just this morning, I announced 7,500 more homes on 25 locations on our bases to be able to accommodate our forces. So this is happening at a pace, as I say, that's not seen before, and we can compete and we can win.
You talk about that submarine deal. We're down to Korea and Germany. Korea, I think, is in Ottawa this week. We've got German officials here next week. How close are we to actually finalizing some kind of a procurement deal on those subs?
The Defence Investment Agency, the special agency we've stood up to deal with procurement, to make it more efficient, to make it more streamlined, is focusing now on those negotiations. They've had teams, technical teams, economic teams, bid teams, dealing with both countries now for the last several weeks. Obviously, it's their job to get the best economic returns, the best industrial benefits that we need, that we can get here for Canada, buying Canadian provisions, steel, aluminum, lumber, know-how, spot welding, mill rights. This is exactly why we set up the specialized process and brought in a new CEO to govern and to direct it. So those negotiations are happening as we speak, and I'm hoping that we'll have something to say about that in very short order.
Okay, I want to dig into the politics a little bit. First of all, Matt Genereux is coming on this. A lot of people saying this is a gift as the new floor crosser. What does he actually bring to the table in the context of this trip?
Look, I think that Mr. Genereux is an accomplished parliamentarian. I've been around for 22 years now in the House, Peter. I've seen people go from one side to the other and vice versa. I think people make hard choices. I think Matt Genereux is a very dedicated member of Parliament, very thoughtful. And I think he will bring a perspective that comes, for example, from his area in Alberta. University of Alberta, for example, is a major player in advanced research. I've met with most of their research teams, their president. We held a meeting out there for our top 15 research university presidents to work with us on our defense industrial strategy. So I think Mr. General will make a very, very good and important contribution.
The Canada-India political file has been fraught for a while, and I think Canadians understand and have bought into the notion that we need to expand our export horizons, and we need to do that expeditiously. How do you balance this, though? I mean, just this week, the head of the Sikh Federation of Canada was informed about threats against him and his family from India that have intensified. How do we justify deepening ties to a country that we have had these problems with in the past and that we haven't fully resolved yet?
Well, we can call these things out as we will. The Prime Minister has been very clear. We can pursue economic activities. We can look at joint ventures. We can look at investments in the defense sector, for example, which we will. But at the same time, we can be honest and we can explain to folks where our concerns lie, where they're coming from. This is something that's been done in the past. This is part and parcel of the dialogue that the Prime Minister has rebooted with India. And I think we're going to see more of that as time goes on. You know, trading partners can do this. We can actually work together, but at the same time, call out each other's failings.
Well, and I think we can call it out. Do you expect some kind of a reflection from the Indian government about its role in election interference and violence in Canada? Do we expect them to have addressed this as I think a lot of Canadians want?
Look, I can't prejudge the outcome of the dialogue that's going to take place there in India, but obviously we've had different folks back and forth from India in preparation for this mission, and back and forth since we've talked about foreign interference in this country. I think progress has been made. I think dialogue's still being pursued, and that's what it's all about. We just have to keep moving and working together and keep talking.
Outside, I mean, I'm sure you read this paper I referred to earlier, the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, calling for this strategic alliance. Outside of that, because what they're looking there is to try to, they're trying to say that the two giants of the mining world, Australia and Canada, should no longer see each other as competitors and see each other more as partners, where they can sort of trade off on things. We've spent an entire generation making sure we build things together with the Americans rather than compete with them. Is that the model going forward for how we can approach, for example, the Australian front?
Look, I think it's going to be both, Peter. We're going to manage our relationship well with our largest trading partner, the United States. But we are expanding and we are diversifying. And it's interesting that both in Brussels and in Munich just last weekend, I met with about 30 different ministers of defense. And it's quite remarkable the extent to which mid-sized countries now heard the Prime Minister's speech in Davos and are now rising up to the notion that we ought to be working more closely together as a cluster of nations. And that's exactly what's been forming, and that's exactly what we're pursuing.
The Prime Minister has been quoted as saying he wanted to broker a bridge between the EU and the Indo-Pacific countries. Is this part of that bridge building? And what might the end result to that actually end up looking like?
Well, I think it's going to, first of all, I think the Prime Minister's efforts are very well received. I've certainly seen and heard this from my counterparts. I think what it might look like is a rapprochement around the world with mid-sized powers, with countries that have, for example, a real interest in shared values and sharing growth and sharing investment. India is an economic powerhouse. Hundreds of unicorns on a stock exchange, much technology to be shared and to partner with Canadian know-how. This is exactly the kind of linkage that we're pursuing. And we think that this is going to amount to quite a bit of opportunity for Canada. Again, in the defense industrial space in particular, I'll be looking to see where we can partner so we can give rise to a much more active Canadian domestic industrial defense base.
All right, we're going to leave it there. National Defence Minister David McGuinty, thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Peter.